I've got to ask you about the Supreme Court leaker, Phil. I've been saying on the show virtually every day since the Supreme Court opinion was leaked in Dobbs, they need a real investigation. They need Phil Houston. You tell me, if old Gail at the Supreme Court marshal said, Phil, would you come in and conduct this investigation? I have to figure out who the liar is because somebody in this building, we have very good reason to believe, leaked this opinion. First time in U.S. Supreme Court history. Do you think you could have done it?
It's very hard to tell. I did a number of leaks investigations when I was in my former life in the agency, and leakers are hard to identify simply because there are so many people that might have access to the information, and who could have been leakers, and you get copycat leakers. There's an old saying in the world of psychology that there are no secrets. And what that means is that as human beings, if you tell me a secret, it's rare that someone will have 100% fidelity in terms of keeping that secret a secret. Because people have other people that they feel that they can confide in a secure manner. And it just seems to be an inherent part of human nature. I'm not saying that people never, ever, have kept a secret, but it is very difficult. And we found that because in our world, keeping the secrets was at the, top of the list.
So how does that relate to the Supreme Court leaker?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of people in the building, okay? So in essence, it becomes like a Ponzi scheme all of a sudden. It's not a scheme, but so if you know something and then you tell me, and then I tell the next person and they tell it, there's an exponential characteristic to it. And before you know it, there's 50 people that know. What you hope for in catching a leaker is that you have a chance to have that person in front of you, meaning that you get a chance to ask them the question, were they a leaker? And I mention that because in the Supreme Court situation, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it couldn't be one of the justices. They're a Supreme Court justice. How on earth could they ever be a leaker? In reality, the reality of human nature is that people lie when they think it's in their best interest to do so. And you ask about, has anybody ever fooled you? Where people get fooled is when their bias is so strong about something. They believe in someone so deeply that they're in their mind, it's impossible for that person to have done it. And it's rare in investigations when when I'm working, with other investigators and so forth, that I don't hear like, no, he or she couldn't have done it. They're just not the type. They wouldn't do that. And in reality, we all lie to varying degrees in terms of quantity and as well as gravity. It is, life wouldn't work if there wasn't some deception involved. Even if it's protective deception, you're not telling someone something so that you can protect their feelings.
So it's not a great idea to have the Supreme Court marshal, who's pretty low on the totem pole at the Supreme Court, doing the interviews, I use that term in air quotes, of Chief Justice John Roberts and all the other justices.
Yeah, I would not have done it. And it's actually, if you use someone independent, I'm not suggesting myself, but if you use someone who's independent, and you're actually doing them a favor as well, because they have no relationship with you and they know that you have no dog in the fight, so to speak. So when they say, we don't think you did it, it's much more meaningful than when your best friend or somebody you've known for 20 or 30 years is the person who did the interview. How hard is that to buy into?
And it's like your boss's boss. I mean, it's like the justices are up here and everybody else at the court is down here. There's a very clear hierarchy and Gail's at the bottom of it and the justices are at the top. But I do wonder, Phil, because we were told from the reports that the questions she asked were, did you do it? Do you know who did it? And that was basically it. That was not the entirety, but that was kind of the reporting was that was the type of questioning she was asking. Okay, you would have to ask those. But my point in mentioning you is if you're a skilled interrogator or somebody who's been educated on the art of detecting deception, you are looking for hands above the midline, for clusters, for the buckets, for what did you say? I'm sorry? You're like all those things that you just mentioned.
And we would have been asking many, many more questions. We would have been asking not only what involvement might you have had in this leak, how did you find out about the leak? How surprised were you when you found out? When's the first time you heard about the leak? And the list can go on and on. If you think about each of those questions and use the dichotomy of truthful or untruthful, the truthful person has a story or an explanation for each of those questions. But what do those questions mean to the untruthful? Okay, how did I find out about it? Oh my gosh, was my idea. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that will cause those deceptive behaviors that you're describing.
It's
And all of
so
those
good.
questions I just gave you are what we call repurposed questions. They're there to get a specific piece of information, but what they do is it's like instant replay in sports. It gives us another look at the key element, which is the act itself. The did you do it? When I say how surprised were you, the deceptive person, how surprised? Like I said, geez, it was my idea. Is what's going on in their head. So what do I say? And
Yeah.
there's a ton of questions that you can come up with in these kinds of interviews that give you a much better chance of, and it's also a much better chance for the truthful person to demonstrate that they're being truthful. Because when you go through a whole series and say, hey, look, we asked Megyn 10 questions and she didn't show any deception on those questions, and
Yeah.
that's much more, has much more power or powerful in terms of the results. One of the things that
It's
I find out that also is confusing and contaminates these investigations is when the investigation is over. So often the people that you say are telling the truth, they never ask you if you're sure, but almost inevitably, if you say that they're being deceptive, they almost always say, "Well, wait a minute, are you sure?" And it's just human nature. We live in that society where we're innocent until proven guilty, and being objective isn't being and managing your bias isn't being prejudiced against that individual in any way.
hmm it's a fascinating thing to think of. You're pressing the pressure point only for the guilty person because the non-guilty person is like, oh yeah, I found out when Bob told me. Yeah, it was shocking. My God. But the guilty person is like, danger, danger, danger with each of those questions.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
Mm,
so, and it's a more comprehensive approach. And you often get some information and some leads. That person is trying to lead you in a certain direction. And when you ask more than one or more than just a couple questions, or look at the other questions you're asking in the light that I described to you, it often gives you leads. The behaviors tell you which way to go and how far down that path to go. Sometimes they get right up to the precipice of getting the answer. Anne alluded to that, when you were talking to her, the person doesn't even realize they have a confession in front of them, and or the person just confessed or said something that was really, really incriminating, and
telling.
they're
Yeah.
just not capturing all the messaging.
Like many people, I am trying to eat healthier these days, and that is why I love good olive oil. And by good, I mean fresh. Olive oil packs the most flavor and healthiest nutrients when it's fresh from the farm. And that is the problem with supermarket olive oils. They're not fresh. They can sit on the shelf for many months growing stale. That's why I like my olive oil direct from small, award winning farms thanks to a guy named TJ Robinson, also known as the olive oil hunter. When I tasted TJ's farm fresh oils, I fell in love with their vibrant, grassy, delicious flavors. It's delicious on salad, veggies, pasta, meat, fish, you name it. Anything you put olive oil on, basically. And as an introduction to his fresh pressed olive oil club, TJ's willing to send you a full-size $39 bottle of one of the world's finest artisanal olive oils for just one little dollar to help him cover shipping. Best of all, there's never a commitment to buy anything, and you can cancel your membership at any time. Get your free $39 bottle for just $1 shipping and taste the difference freshness makes. Go to harvestfreshnow.com. harvestfreshnow.com for a free bottle and pay just $1 in shipping. harvestfreshnow.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.